okay, a trophic level. So basically just a trophic level is an energy storing step, okay, and we use them to compare different food chains. But here's a couple different food chains. So this corn right here, this would be a trophic level. It stores matter and energy until it gets eaten by the chicken. And then the chicken stores matter and energy till it gets eaten by the person in KFC. Okay? So each of these is a trophic level, stores matter and energy. So we use trophic levels so that we can compare different food chains and compare the roles of different organisms in different ecosystems and see who's fulfilling the same kinds of roles. Does that make sense? Okay, so we can compare our land food chain to our ocean food chain with the kelp, the urchin, and the sea otter and see, okay, in these two food chains, the person and the sea otter are serving like the same role. Yeah? Okay. So, because scientists like to name things, we name all of our trophic levels. Okay? And so the lowest trophic level, the things that we've been calling autotrophs that make their own food, we call them primary producers. Okay? Primary producers. So they make their own food. Examples of autotrophs, primary producers in the ocean, are going to be things like bacteria and diatoms. Okay? And algae, so like seaweeds, and also some plants. So you've got like marsh plants and actual seagrasses themselves. So you've got different kinds of primary producers. And you guys looked at diatoms under the microscope in your lab, right? So diatoms are little single-celled plants. They start off food chains in the ocean. Yeah? Okay. So those are our primary producers. They're the autotrophs that start off all the food chains. Herbivores, okay, we call primary consumers. So you have primary producers and then you have primary consumers. These are the things that are going to be eating the primary producers. They like salad. Okay, so they eat all of the primary producers. And that's all that they eat. So manatees just eat seagrass. Here's our little picture of our manatee, bless you, eating seagrass. Okay, our sea turtle eating turtle grass. Urchin eating kelp. Okay, they're eating the primary producers. So primary consumer, primary first consumer. So they're the first consumers. All right? So the first things that are eating the primary producers. The bottom right picture right here, that's a copepod. Copepods are going to be the little animals in the ocean that actually eat like the diatoms and the little teeny tiny phytoplankton. So you have tons and tons of copepods in the ocean. And you guys saw those again in your lab as well, right? So lots of these little copepods eating the little teeny tiny phytoplankton, all right? And then they get eaten by bigger things. And so they're actually an important link in the food chain to pass energy and matter up from the tiny microscopic plankton to higher levels of the food chain. Okay, so copepods are also herbivores. Carnivores are going to be like secondary consumers. Okay, or top consumers. So they're going to be things that are eating the other animals. Okay, so they're the second consumer. You can have different levels as you go up the food chain. So you could have like tertiary and quaternary consumers. Tertiary would be like the third step, and then the quaternary would be like the fourth consumer. So, but they would all be carnivores. So they are carnivores. They hunt and kill other animals. Examples would be like sea otters, most sharks, sea stars. Most sharks, not all sharks. So, and here's your pictures. So sea otters eating urchins, okay, sharks eating like your seal, and like tuna eating other fish, and sea stars eating mussels, and then anemones eat fish and other animals as well. All right? Okay. Omnivores can be either a primary or a secondary consumer depending on what they are eating. So omnivores will eat both plants and animals. And if they're eating plants, okay, then they are going to be the primary consumer. If they're eating the animals, then they're going to be a secondary consumer. So it just depends on what they're eating at the time. That will determine what step in the food chain they are. So examples, mussels, anchovies, and clams. So these mussels right here in the top left, when it's high tide, Okay, the water comes up and covers these mussels. They open their shells and they stick their feeding apparatus out, and they will feed on both phytoplankton, which are plants, and the zooplankton that are in the water. So if they're eating the phytoplankton, they'll be primary consumers, but if they're eating the zooplankton, they will be secondary consumers. All right, you also have detritivores. Detritivores are going to be scavengers. They're going to be the things that are eating other things that have died. Okay, so they eat dead stuff. The term detritus is the term that we will use for the rest of the year for dead stuff. Okay, so if you hear the term detritus, it means dead stuff. And you will literally hear it for the rest of the year. So make sure you know it now. Save yourself some trouble. All right, so detritus, dead stuff. And lots of carnivores that would like normally go around and hunt and kill things, if the opportunity presents itself and there's something dead, they'll eat that too. So they'll be a carnivore, but then if they have to be, if it's easy food, then they'll be a scavenger, a detritivore. So they'll eat dead stuff. Some examples are going to be things like worms, okay, eating the dead stuff out of the dirt. Crabs are detritivores, so they'll hunt and prey and kill things, but then if there's something that dies, they'll eat that too. And then hagfish, we'll talk about hagfish when we talk about the deep sea. But hagfish, when a whale dies and it falls to the bottom, hagfish are one of the main things that actually eat the dead whale. So, and we'll actually watch a movie about that too. So those are examples of detritivores, scavengers. They eat dead stuff. Decomposers are going to be different from your detritivores. So detritivores are going to eat the dead stuff. Your decomposers are going to actually break that dead stuff down and return it into the ecosystem in the form of nutrients. Okay, so decomposers eat waste products like poop, okay, and decaying things, and they break them down and help to recycle those nutrients into the ecosystem. Most of the time, your decomposers are going to be bacteria, little single-celled microorganisms that live in the water. All right? So bacteria, decomposers. And we skipped a slide that we're now going to go back to right now. I know.